So Fred, I think pretty much almost everybody who knows about your films knows that you played football. I don't know if everybody knows that you were like an elite football player. You were a really, really good football player back before the NFL-AFL merger. So you played football for 8 years?
Yeah, I first started at Northwestern University. I know it's very difficult to find an egghead and a jock all in the same body, but I went to Northwestern. I graduated as an architectural engineer. But I went to Northwestern on a track scholarship. I didn't really go on football. I mean, I didn't want to get my face hurt and get my body hurt, so I wasn't about to play football. So I went on a track scholarship. I was a sprinter. I was 195, 200-pound, 100-yard dash sprinter, 200 meters and 440, and I was a Big Ten shot put champ too. So fortunately, Ara Parsegian came to Northwestern the same year that I did. And he heard about this big guy out there was running the sprints and winning the dashes in the Big Ten races. And he come over to me one day and we were practicing and he looked at me and he said, you ever played football before? I said, not really. I mean, I tried in school, but only to get girls. I didn't really care about playing the game. So he says, why don't we just change your scholarship? I said, I don't know. I said, well, look, this is a secret now, man. This can't not leave this room. He says, we'll give you a new car. I said, what kind of car? He says, what do you want? This is like 56. I says, I want a new Thunderbird, a new passenger. He says, okay, go down to the Ford dealership next week, pick up one, come into my office tomorrow and sign the contract. Dude, I ran all the way to his office. I ran all the way. I got my new car. I had a red Thunderbird with black top, red interior. I was hot stuff, man. So I changed my scholarship, and fortunately, I made All-American. I was a pass receiver. I was catching the ball, so I was All-American playing ball. And even then, I didn't want to be a professional. I wasn't looking to be a pro. I was studying architecture, and I wanted to be an architect. So when I graduated, I got drafted by the 49ers. And I said, okay, this is great. I'll get to go to California and practice my architecture. My signing bonus, I was number 2 draft choice. My signing bonus was $1,900, and my starting salary was $9,005, which was, at that time, White Tittle was the big quarterback at that time, and he was making $10,000, so I was right at the top of their echelon. So I went to California, and I started working for Bechtel Steel during the off season. It was 6 months as an architect, 6 months as a pro football player. I worked for Bechtel Steel. I was designing power plants in Dubai before people knew where Dubai was. This was like 1960. I was doing this. So I had a good career going, and so I kept doing it.
So the other guys on the team were probably making, sandwich money by being a bouncer in a bar or something like that. And you were designing power plants in Dubai.
But I'm that kind of guy, I am what I am,
I think as we continue to go through your career, it's going to be pretty obvious that, that is sort of a theme in your life. It's just like, you're not the average guy.
Well, look, man, I came from the ghetto, south side of Chicago. I've never had anybody in my life tell me what I could do. Even my parents. They always tell, you ask them, you want to do something, no, you can't do that. Why do you want to do that? You might get hurt. So my motivation was the guy in the mirror looking back at me saying, nobody can tell you what you can't do. I do what I want to do. I follow my heart. I follow my energy. I do what I want. Nobody told me what I could do, so that's the motivation. And also being black is another thing. Your motivation comes from within. It doesn't come from outside. Your motivation comes from you feeling that you can accomplish something when other people tell you you can't. If you want to be an innovator, you want to do something different, then that's your choice. And if you fail, you don't fail. The only time you fail is when you quit and decide not to do it again. But if you continue to do it, sooner or later, you're going to win, or somebody's going to hear you and recognize that you have all this energy, and they'll guide you into something that maybe you want to do, but even then, it's still your choice.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at your life, you can see a lot of choices that you made. So you played football at an elite level for a number of years, ended up playing in the Super Bowl, and then that was your last year, I believe.
But I've always been a thug, man. I mean, I was a thug, Even in high school, man, I was a thug, because I was a pretty boy, I was cute. So everybody wanted to pick on the cute guy, right? Everybody wants to fight me. So I had to fight to show them that I had another level that you had to overcome beyond how I looked. So after a while, I started to enjoy it. I just started to walk up and slap people, man. Why you hit me? Because you looked at me. You know, so this thug mentality is what I carried throughout my pro football career. And it's helped me in my movie career, too.
Yeah, it sure doesn't hurt.
Because I'm not getting hit, I'm doing the hitting. That's why they call me the Hammer.
And the nickname The Hammer started in your pro football career, correct?
Yeah, like I said, I was drafted by the 49ers as a football player. I thought I was going to be an outstanding offensive receiver, so I get to the practice the first day and they give me a red shirt. This is Red Hickey. And I said, what is this red shirt for? Does this mean I'm a special guy? He says, no, you're going to play defense. I said, man, I can't play defense. Don't you know who I am? He said, yeah, we know who you are, but we have faith in you that you can make this transition. So after the first week or 10 days, I can't cover nobody, man. I can't run backwards. I never ran backwards in my life. I'm falling down. I'm looking like I never played this game before. So one night I'm in my room and I'm saying to myself, there's no way I could go back to the ghetto and tell the boys I can't make a little poop butt football team. Come on, man. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to the ghetto and tell the boys that the Hammer didn't make a football team. But I wasn't a Hammer at that time. I was Speedy. So I came out to practice next day and I had a plan. First guy come up was R.C. Owens. He was a big offensive star in those days. His name was Alley Oop. He came up to the line of scrimmage. I got about 1 yard off of him. Red Hickey, the coach, says, Williamson, get back. I says, not getting back. Hike the damn ball. He says, all right, make him look silly today. So they hiked the ball. R.C. made one step, and I hit him. I gave my hammer this way. Knocked him out. Red Hickey runs over and says, God damn it, Williamson, what are you doing? I says, I covered him. He says, okay, son, get back. You got the football team made. Get back and stop hammering my player so I can get some pass offense in. So that's how I got the name of Hammer.
So I want to play our first clip of the night, and this is a clip that has a lot to do with your football career and also has a lot to do with your movie career. It's from the movie MASH. So I think we'll run that clip first. So let's go ahead and run the clip, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So that was very much like the situation of working on MASH with Robert Altman, wasn't it?
Well, you know, it was very fortunate that I had to be at the right place at the right time. This was done by 20th Century Fox. And at that time, first let me take you back to the fact when I retired from pro football, I went full-time as an architect. But it was the change was too dynamic for me. I had 6 months of football, 6 months as an architect. So by the time I got bored sitting behind a desk, it was time to go play football. So when I finished football, I'd go back and be an architect. Once I went full-time as an architect, I'm sitting behind a desk and it's 9 to 5 and an hour for lunch. After about 9 months, the walls started closing in on me. And I said, I got to find something else to do. So one night I'm watching television and I see Diane Carroll has a show called Julia. She was the first black actress to have her own television show. And I noticed that each week the guest star was a new boyfriend. And I said, I'm better looking than any of those guys. I'm going to Hollywood, become Diane Carroll's boyfriend. So I packed up my little Jaguar XKE from San Francisco. I drove all the way to Los Angeles, drove up to the front gate at 20th Century Fox. And they says, why are you here? I want to see Mr. Hal Cantor. I'd got his name off of the credits from watching it. And they says, you have an appointment? I says, no, well, you can't come in. I says, fine, okay. So I drove around the corner, went to a phone booth, called back to the gate. This is Mr. Hal Cantor's office. We're expecting Mr. Williamson. Please let him on. Drove back around to the gate. Says, okay, we just got a call from you. His office is down to the right, blah, blah, blah. So I go in. In those days, they had the squawk box. They didn't have a secretary, didn't have the intercom system. So I said, I'm here to see Mr. Hal Cantor. She says, do you have an appointment? I says, no. So she pushes the squawk box and says, Mr. Cantor, there's a Mr. Hammer here. I says, no, not Mr. Hammer, the Hammer. So there's about 5 seconds of silence. He says, football player? I says, yeah. So we go in, we talk. He says, why are you here? He says, I was watching your show, Julia. And she is, I'm gonna tell you what I said, but I mean, it wasn't very nice. I says, she's a hoe. He said, what do you mean? She got a new boyfriend each week. She's a hoe. She's seeing a different guy each week. You need a regular boyfriend. I'm it. said, well, yeah, we've been thinking about that. He says, you ever had any acting experience? I did 5 years of Raisin in the Sun, 10 years of Carmen Jones in Canada. I took him to Canada because I know he didn't know squat about Canada. If I'd have said New York, he'd have said, what repertoire company do you know Susan Strasberg? So I lied like a dog. You know? So I said, okay, that's good. We'll write a show for you. So he wrote a show for me called Dancer in the Dark. It was about a pro football player who retired, came to work, meet Diane Carroll where she works, we fall in love. And they signed me to a 3-year contract. So I played Diane Carroll's boyfriend for 3 years. Took me 1 week to accomplish that. So one day I'm sitting in the commissary having lunch, and a guy walks by and he says, "You're the Hammer, right?" I says, "Yeah." He says, I'm doing a movie. I got a football scene in it. I know nothing about football. Would you direct all the football stuff, put it all together? I says, "Yeah." The guy talking to me was Robert Altman, and the movie was MASH. So that's how I got into MASH, from Robert Altman recognizing me as the Hammer. Then they didn't know anything about it. I mean, I started talking about X's and zeros and drawing the plays. "No, you do that." I said, okay. So it all happened. I brought in about 10 pros from professional football. I got a semi-pro team out of Santa Monica so that we'd have some real hitting, so it wouldn't be any fake hitting in there. I mean, all the hitting was real. And I put it all together, and it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it's one of the best football scenes in any movie, and you directed. That was your. Later on, you do a lot more directing, but that was your first.
That was my first directing job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, what was it like? What did you learn from Robert Altman? What was it like to work with Robert Altman? Did you learn any things to do and to not do in your career later on?
Well, I think the first innovative thing that Robert Altman brought to the screen is that everybody can talk at one time. If you mic everybody, you don't have to worry about overlapping, because overlapping works, because that's how people talk in real life. You don't wait for somebody to get through talking before you say something. If an idea comes to your mind, you speak then. You don't wait till somebody gets through. And Robert Altman was great at that. He mic'd everybody. So everybody talked over everybody, and that's what made the film kind of work. It was kind of different. It's kind of innovative. People didn't understand it and appreciate it at first. But you know what? When you see the movie, you got to see it 4 or 5 times to see what everybody is saying, because everybody's talking at the same time. So I learned that. That was the first thing I learned, is to mic everybody and don't be concerned about overlapping, because that's old stuff. It's old hat.
It forms like a tapestry of meaning. It just adds to it.
Exactly. And you listen and you hear. If somebody's talking, you're sitting in a restaurant, you can hear people talking, and you only listen to the ones that's talking about some girl that you knew or want to know, and they're giving advice about her, and these guys over here talking about cigars. You're certainly hearing that guy about the cigars. You tune in over here, and that's how life is.
Yeah, it's true. And then, so after working with Robert Altman, who was not like any other filmmaker, you went and worked with Otto Preminger, who was a bit more old school.
Well, the producer of MASH was Ingo Preminger, which was Otto's brother. So he took a liking to me, and he had told me that his brother Otto was looking for a guy to play Beach Boy and tell me, "You love me, Junie Moon," but he couldn't find the right physical person to do it, because this character had to carry a paraplegic guy on his back the whole movie. So he decided to take me over to meet Otto at his house, and he forgot to tell him that we were coming. So that was a private party. We kind of crashed the party. Otto was a very intimidating guy anyway. I mean, he thought he was. So we sit on the couch, and he says, "Read this. Show me you can read." Now, you understand, man, I'm not a pro football. I don't know I'm reading page numbers and everything. I don't know about reading. I just know about acting. I don't know about cold readings and all that. So I wasn't doing very well, so I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I took the script, I tore it in half, threw it up in the air. I said, "Screw you, I don't want this damn part anyway." So he said, "Oh, very good, because you football players, when you stop playing, you get out of shape, you get fat, and you have to carry this guy on your shoulder throughout the whole movie." I let him finish the sentence. So I grabbed him by the collar, and I grabbed one leg, and I lifted him in the air. And everybody in the party stood up because they thought I was going to body slam him. But I didn't. I put him down gently, and I went over to his wife, who was standing by the door. I kissed her on the hand, and I said, "I'm very sorry. I apologize for breaking in on your party, and please excuse me." When I go home, I get home, I got 18 messages. "Fad, come back, I want to talk to you." So I got the part, Beach Boy. Hey, the worst thing anybody can say to you is no. And it won't be the first no you ever had in your life, and it will not change your life to hear it over and over again. So no means nothing.
But after this point, people started saying yes to you a lot.
Not really, because, you know, you got to remember, this is like in the 60s, man, so it wasn't cool to be black yet. Still had my problems, yo. So I had to prove, you know, to them that I was a marketable commodity, that there was an audience out there, a black audience out there who wanted to see things that they had not seen before. You know, by then we were tired of Mantan Moreland and Stephen Fletcher, and the only black hero that we had was Sidney Poitier. And he was a great actor, but me being a physical person, I want to see him, you know, slap somebody, hit somebody, you know. But so I decided that if I was going to come into the business, then I was going to come in on that level. So I gave a press conference, and I called the press on the lot, and I said, I'm coming into the business, and I have 3 rules. 1, I have to win all my fights in a movie. 2, you can't kill me in a movie. 3, I get the girl at the end of the movie if I want her. You do 2 out of 3 of those, and I'm in your movie. So that's what I proclaimed, you know, because I was setting myself up to know that if I was coming on my terms and not on their terms, because then I'd go back and be an architect again.
And so one of the next movies you made was That Man Bolts.
That Man Bolt was Universal's attempt to present the first black James Bond, which we shot in Hong Kong, we shot in Japan, we shot in Las Vegas, we shot in LA. And it was a very good film, and they capitalized on the fact that I'm a martial artist, so I used martial arts in the film. But they got nervous. The film did very well, made a lot of money, and they came to me. They had a 3-picture contract. And they said, we're just going to pay you off. We don't want to make 2 more right now because we don't want to be the first company to make black stars. We don't want to do that right now because we don't think the time is right. And I'm saying, look, the movie made a lot of money, so why don't we continue? He says, no, we had a meeting and we don't think we want to do that. So the next year, Shaft came out. Then they called me back and says, I want to do more. And I said, forget about it. I don't need you anymore. I got Po' Boy Productions now. I'm making my own films. Thank you for, you know, giving me the opportunity to make my name a known commodity. And so I started making my own films, Po' Boy Productions. My first film was Adios Amigo with Richard Pryor.
And somebody said one time that Hollywood can only keep one thing on its mind at a time. And when Shaft hit, it was a big, huge, giant hit. And once that happened, then all of a sudden Hollywood realized, hey, there's tons of African-American audiences. There are theaters that play for African-Americans. We need to start making that product. And you were ideally positioned at that time to not only appear in movies, but also to make your own movies.
Well, Hollywood was in financial problems at that time. They had made a lot of movies big budget movies that didn't work. Liza Minnelli had made one, and they had lost a lot of money, and they found out that these films with black stars cost probably $2 million, $1.5 million, and they could make $20, $25 million, and that was enough to pay their light bill and pay off some bills that they were behind. But they weren't really excited about it. They didn't want to propel this image that this was now going to happen. As a matter of fact, they called them black exploitation movies, and I never really understand what that meant. Who the hell was being exploited? Actors were being paid. The audience were being satisfied because now they had heroes that never had before. So it was a terminology that didn't fit. So it didn't last. And I think it's the fault of the black actors and actresses because all their movies were retribution movies. Let's get Whitey. Let's kick Whitey's ass. You know, I kill everybody. I kill black people, yellow people, pink people. So I didn't fit. I didn't fit into that genre of black exploitation. That's why I survived. That's why you see me still making movies, and Jim Brown isn't, and Roundtree isn't, and Billy Dee, and all the actors that were really big at that time sort of went by the wayside because they were making retribution movies. And like I said, I killed everybody.
One of the ones that you made is a classic, not just a classic because it's good, but a classic because it's in the mode of classic Hollywood films. It's a movie called Black Caesar, and that's the next clip that we have. So this is a clip of, well, you'll see. Go ahead and kill the lights. We'll watch this clip from Black Caesar. That's a real classic Warner Brothers style montage there.
Well, you know, in the short time that you've seen me, in the short time that you've known me, you see I never step very far out of character. So obviously I have something that people like to see. So it's me, you know. My idols were Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson. When you go see their movies, there's no surprises, there's no singing, there's no dancing. You know? George Raft, Humphrey Bogart, Cagney, these guys, I mean, we don't have anybody coming up like that now.
It's true, it's true.
So I'm lucky. I'm selling me. So I don't have to go too far out of that. You know, so I'm very fortunate that the way I am is the way that I am on the screen. People say that, you know, being typecast, but if it's me, it's like, how can it be typecast? It's me. And typecast means you're consistently employed.
And a big part of what you have, what Clint Eastwood has, what a lot of these stars have, is this unquestioned male authority. There's this like, this is the man on the scene. It's like, this is the guy. This is like, obviously, if you're going to rank the dudes in this shot, this guy is at the top of the food chain.
And you can't fake it, you know? You can't fake being tough. You can't fake being a bad guy. I mean, I can walk down the street in Chicago and New York, or even here in Austin, Texas, and somebody will recognize me, and as we pass each other on the sidewalk, as we pass, I can hear him say, "Damn, that's a bad motherfucker, man." So,
yeah, I get a lot of that too.
You can't fake it, man. I mean, you know, either you have what you pretend to represent, or, I mean, it's not that I'm the baddest guy on the planet, but even if you kick my butt, you're gonna be wounded. How you gonna go home with no eye and some teeth missing and said I left the hammer laying on the sidewalk? Okay, but did you win? You know, if you left me on the sidewalk and you go home and you got no eyes and all your teeth are missing, did you win the fight? No. And so, you know, I am what I represent, man. You know, that's me. Tall, dark, and handsome. I can't help that. Plus, I have 4 black belts in martial arts, so it's a good thing.
And you didn't get into that. Like, a lot of people got into that after Bruce Lee. You were early in that.
I was early because I did it during off-season when I was playing pro ball, because I didn't like stinky locker rooms, and I didn't like working out in locker rooms, so I went outside and took up martial arts just to stay in shape, never knowing that I would ever do it in the films and the movies. I did it to stay in shape and to live up to the image that I portray.
I think one thing, once we got into the so-called blaxploitation era, is one misconception is that it was only African-American audiences that were watching these, but everybody was watching these.
Well, you know, what's really funny, when these movies all came out, if you go to the theater in downtown New York and Chicago, the theaters were full at noon, and they were full by all white audiences. Guys in suits and ties and attaché cases wanted to see these movies, but didn't want anybody seeing them going into the theater. So they went at noon. All the black people went after dinner, right? You know, and so I had a lot of fans that were white, but they were guys who were sneaking into the theater at noontime, so they didn't want to be seen. So it didn't really matter as long as they went and came and understood what I was trying to do was create a hero for the blacks to watch and to see, because at that time we needed heroes. This was like in the early 70s, man, and they were still sicking dogs on blacks and hosing them down on the streets. So we had no heroes. So I was trying to fill that void as a hero.
And in movies, heroes were becoming more complicated. There were fewer sort of, black and white type situations in films where you had, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, and you were able to step in and be the tough guy in a lot of these movies.
Well, because like I said, I kicked everybody's ass, man. I mean, Brad Pitt could never be my hero. Tom Cruise could never be my hero. I mean, guys are 5'6", 5'7". How you gonna tell me you're gonna protect my back if I go into a bar, man, we have a fight? I don't want one of those guys behind me. I want Jim Brown behind me, you know? I want Bernie Casey behind me. I want Roundtree behind me. I don't want Tom Cruise and these guys back there. No, forget about it. They'd be calling their stuntmen by the time the stuntman got there. My ass would be kicked already. No. I want my boys behind me, guys I know they can handle it.
So around this time, we're getting into some of the po' boy productions where you're starting to make movies on your own. You're producing movies, and then eventually you're directing the films. You're writing the films. How are you getting all these skills together to do all of that?
Well, I think first of all, being an architect allowed me to see things in 3D. So that if I read a script or if I did a script, I can see what it was going to look like before the product was finished, and that helped me as a director. And also, it was cheaper to do it myself, and I didn't have to answer to anybody. If you make your own mistakes and you accept the mistakes that you make, that's more important than working for somebody else who's making mistakes, and you can't say to him, "Man, that's not going to work." I mean, you can't tell the director, that's shot. It's going to be stupid. It's not going to work. So when you have the power to make your own decisions, then you live and die by your own brain, by your own intelligence, and that's what everybody wants, and that's what anybody wants. And that's a big step from a guy like me coming from the ghetto, to be able to be in a decision-making process where I decide what I want to do and how I want to do it. That's a big step, and that's a big responsibility.
What were you learning about the market at this point?
Very simple. I learned that films like Black Caesar, Hell Up in Harlem, Three the Hard Way were being sold to the foreign market at $3,000 per film. And I didn't understand that. And they're saying, well, black films don't sell in Europe. Well, this is because the people buying the film in Europe were playing on the prejudice of the American society and the American producers. They wanted to buy them cheap so they could make more money. And the only way to do that is to convince the producers over here that this guy in this film, the Hammer, Fred Williamson, movies don't do well over here, so they buy him cheap.
And they buy every single one of them.
And I'm saying, hold it, man. I got Italian girlfriends, French girlfriends, Sweden girlfriends. You tell me they don't love me over there? Are you kidding? So I made a film. I made my first film, and I went to Cannes. Adios Amigo, me and Richard Pryor. I took the film and I went to Cannes. This is 1975. And I sit on the terrace, the Carlton Terrace. I gave the maitre d' $50 a day to save a table for me in the middle of the patio at lunchtime. And this was the Carlton Terrace, a very famous place where everybody goes. So I took my film, I took some girls that I met there, I paid them $50. I put them t-shirts on. This was the beginning of the wet t-shirt stuff. And I put Adios Amigo on all the shirts, and I set up my office right there on the table. So they come by, the first guy comes by from Greece. I want to buy your film. I said, fine, good, $3,000. I said, no way, man. You're not getting another Fred Williamson movie for $3,000. Nobody is. So nobody bought anything until the last day. Greece guy came back, he says, okay, what do you want? I said, $25,000. So we settled at $22,500. So my film cost me $75,000, my first film, and I went home with about $350,000.
Just from overseas?
Just from overseas sales, because I had discovered that was their ploy to convince the producers over here that film with a black star didn't do well in Europe market, and that's a farce.
And what you were able to deliver to those markets is they loved action movies. They loved American action movies. But they weren't looking at it and say, oh, this is a black action movie. No. They were looking at it and say, this is an action movie with a super cool, tough guy.
But even more than that, if you look at all the films back in the day, the music was fantastic. The music sold the film. The music helped the film. There was always a great artist. And that's the great thing about being black, is that all the great musicians are black. So they all want to be on the film. I mean, you don't see any of the black artists. How many films did Miles Davis score? How many films did Ramsey Lewis score? I mean, all these great artists don't get an opportunity to score films in Hollywood because Hollywood just don't use them. I'd get them for $5. I had James Brown did this score. $5 for the synchronization fee. You get all the royalties. I don't want any of the royalties from your music. I just want you to put the music on the screen. and that it was a happy marriage. He got what he wanted. He got worldwide recognition from all the music that he did, and I got fantastic music on the film. I mean, being black has its advantages. You know what I'm saying?
Hell Up in Harlem actually had 2 great scores because it had the great James Brown score, and then Edwin Starr had a score too.
They keep playing one now that you don't even know came from Hell Up in Harlem, which is Papa Got a Brand New Bag. They play it all the time on the radio, but that means that was the show Hell Up in Harlem where my father took over my business when I was laying in the hospital being hurt, and they still play that song all the time. Papa Got a Brand New Bag. They play all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a classic time and amazing music. So, during this whole time, you're becoming a really big star in Europe, especially Italy.
Yeah.
And you're going and working in Italian movies. What was that like for you? Was that a lot of fun going to Italy and working in those movies?
Well, I mean, my motto in life is go where you love, and not hang out where people pretend to love you. I go where I'm loved, and where I have a good time and make money at the same time. The Italian people embraced me because I was passing Clint Eastwood as he was coming from doing his westerns to coming doing his Dirty Harrys. I was going there to take the place of Dirty Harry, and I made several movies, 3 of them called Black Cobra, which is a cop like Dirty Harry. So I filled their void, and Clint went over and did his westerns, and then all of a sudden I'm doing westerns. Then they tried to make me a gladiator, and I was having a good time, man. I was having fun. I was living out fantasies and having a good time and eating good spaghetti and Italian food and drinking good wine,
How did the sort of production, what was the world of production like, working for guys like Enzo Castellari and Stelvio Massi? Was it different from working in low-budget American movies?
Yeah, it's very different because the cameras sound like wash machines, and everybody is talking while you're working. They're asking for coffee and 2 creams so that's the first thing you have to get over, man. I mean, you're saying
there's no sync sound there.
No, you're saying to the girl, I really like you. You're really nice. Can I have 2 cups of coffee and make cream? Yes, sir. I think you're great. Would you just shut up? That's how they work over there, and they don't mind it, But we're spoiled. We can't do that. They don't mind if the lips move and the words come out 2 seconds later. We're spoiled. We want perfection. So it was a big change for me. I had to really get used to it. But when I started making my films there, then I started bringing my own sound people from the States, or I brought sound people from France, and we did direct sound. But that was a big change for them, and they had a hard time adjusting to direct sound. And I brought silent cameras that didn't sound like wash machines. So they had to adjust to me, but they were having a good time because now they were making films that could be sold outside of the Italian market, that can be brought to the States and being sold here. So it was a learning process for them, and it was a learning process for me.
And it's interesting when you look at the Italian action movies that you were making. It's not black this, black that. No. They're just hardcore action movies.
Well, in America I'm a black actor. In Europe I'm an action star. That's a big difference. That's a big difference because if you're a black actor in America, they play your films in 25 so-called key black markets like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. That's where they give the movies a big push that have a black star in them. But if you really look at it today, and you look at the so-called black stars like Denzel Washington, Samuel Jackson, there's only one star that makes a film without a supporting cast that's white, and that's Will Smith. If you look at any film that Denzel has made or Samuel has made, there's always a counter white star to help them get it in other markets and not have it considered a black film. And that's their ploy, that's their plight, that's how they get away with it, because they want a black audience, they still want a black audience. So Samuel Jackson plays every black man. Whatever role there's black, they go, oh, we've got a role here with black. Oh, that's Samuel Jackson. Oh, that's Denzel Washington. That's how they think in Hollywood, and that's how they do it. That's why I started making my own films,
So, throughout the 70s, you were becoming much less of a black action star, even in America, because these movies are coming back and they're being hits. These Italian movies are hits in America too, and they're very influential. One movie that you made in New York around the early 80s here is a movie called Vigilante, and it's one of my favorite roles that you played.
Well, again, everything is by plan. I plan everything. It's not by choice for me, you know. They use me, I use them. Put me in one of their films, then once I ride the tide on their film, I go make my little small film. Mm-hmm. So, usury is a good thing, if it's equal. Mm-hmm. So, you can be used, but learn how to use back.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of notes that you guys are you ought to be taking if you're not. So I want to play a quick scene from this. And when you watch this scene from Vigilante, just think, who else could have played this part? Because there's not many people that have the authority to play this kind of part. So roll the scene from Vigilante, please, Seb.
This was the beginning of my mustache. Because I felt I was too good looking. So I had to grow a mustache to turn my mouth down to make me look angry. Without looking angry. You just let the mustache do it. So this was my premiere mustache movie.
Just the mustache and the beard, like, man, in this movie, it should have won an Academy Award.
It was fun to do. We had a great time. Robert Forster was there, and we had a good time. I'm gonna have a good time on all my films, man, because I'm me, and that's always fun. I don't have to pretend to be somebody else. I don't have to pretend. I just have to get the words out. That's all.
This is the movie from just following your career. I remember watching this and just going, wow, Fred Williamson is a really good actor. You have some like great scenes in this.
I told you I was a thug, dude. I mean, that's my thug thing. That's my thug image coming out, man.
Yeah.
I've made that speech to people close to that in their faces a few times, you know.
So you were actually going and killing people on the street as a vigilante, is what you're saying?
Yeah, but, you know, I apologized afterwards.
Around the same time, you were making the Jesse Crowder movies. You were making your own series of sort of Dirty Harry type movies.
That's a strange story there. I made Eastwood movies now, and I picked this name Jesse Crowder because it was a kid that I respected in high school. He was a great football player, and I was like freshman, and I'm watching this guy play, and I thought he was the baddest dude in the school, man. I mean, everybody circled him. Whenever he walked through the hallway, everybody got out of his way. But I never saw him fight anybody. He never really hit anybody. He just, the way he carried himself, the way that he walked, and the way that he looked at you, you just know he could eat you alive, man. So nobody bothered him, okay? So now I make these 3 films, Jesse Crowder. I look up, and one day, I get a lawsuit. A lawyer calls me, you're being sued. By who? Jesse Crowder. Why? You're using his name. What? I mean, just think what kind of position Hollywood would be in if everybody sued Hollywood for somebody's name that was similar to some character in a movie. But I had to counter-suit it because if I passed it up, I lose. So now I got to fight this guy in court. And I didn't go. I just took a lawyer. I sent a lawyer. And this was in Gary, Indiana, okay? So they go to court, and my lawyer brings like 5 phone books, and he lays them all out, and he says, which one of these Jesse Crowders are you? Do you know martial arts? No, sir. You play pro football? No, sir. Well, which one of these Jesse Crowders are you? He was embarrassed. I mean, he let some lawyer talk him into, you know, if we win, I get money, and if we don't win, you don't owe me anything. So, but had I not challenged it, I would have lost. I mean, that's ridiculous. And when I saw him again, I really wanted to wipe him out, dude. But I still had respect for him, man. He was Jesse Crowder. He was misled by somebody. And by then, he was old and ugly anyway at that time. So I didn't want to bother him. You know, he had his own problems.
So at this time, you're producing movies. You're going to directing films. What had you learned? What lessons were you applying? Were you like figuring out, okay, we got to get some action going in the foreground. We got to what had you learned at that point that you were applying to making movies?
I learned not to wait for people to employ you. Find a way to employ yourself. Find a way to raise the money. Find a way to satisfy your creativity. There's always a way. You find a way to do it. I went to Europe and pre-sold my films and brought the contracts back to the banks. The bank loaned me money against the contracts, and that's how I started making my own films. I wasn't a victim of people saying, we're not ready for you, we're not quite ready to do these kind of films. You have to take your energy into your own hands to get it done, because people don't always think the way that you do, and sometimes the way you think is a little over the top, but if that's you, that's you. Why compromise? Why come down to their level and do what they want? I mean, I turned down a lot of work because they want me in a film to bring in the black market, but they don't understand my rules. They want to kill me in the first 5 minutes and have Schwarzenegger avenge my death? Screw that. Kill Schwarzenegger. Let me avenge his death. I get movies all the time. I get TV shows all the time. I mean, they just don't understand what, or either they don't believe they don't believe me when I tell them what I represent, because I get all kind of stupid roles and stupid things to play just so that the black audience can come and bring money and make the film a success. I mean, it's amazing the kind of stuff that they offer me.
What kind of, give me an example of something you turned down.
I turned down one just yesterday. They wanted me to play a chef that was an old man that could hardly walk, but he was a chef. And I said, why do you want me to do this? Well, he doesn't die. I said, if you keep pursuing this, you will. So I mean, it's all kind of stuff, man. And they just don't understand that what I sell is an image. I can work forever selling an image. If you have something that people like to see you do, no matter what it is, if it's comedy, if it's a tough guy, if it's a funny guy, if that is what the people like to see you do, it's not always your choice. You have to go along with what the public like to see you do. Otherwise, you become unemployed. How many actors who decide they want to do 10 different things and change, and then you don't hear about them again? The idea is, first, try to give off the image that you want. Sometimes that works, and if it doesn't work, go with what they works. But once you get that power, you can always come back to what you want to do. I mean, when you see George Clooney's always George Clooney. He doesn't do anything that's un-George Clooney. He moves his head the same way. He goes like this, goes like that. He's always George Clooney. You never see him get excited, you know, his head's go. Talks over this side for about 5 minutes, then he goes to this side 5 minutes. And he's successful. He makes movies that are successful. That's George Clooney, huh? He didn't do anything different. George is George, right? He's found an image, he's found something that people like to see him do, and he plays it.
I don't think I can watch George Clooney the same way.
Next time you watch George Clooney, count how many times he cocks it this way and it goes this way. It's George.
So you talk about there's a certain thing that people expect from you. Now, there was a comeback movie, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, for not a comeback for you because you've been making movies, but for a lot of people that you worked with in this film, you worked with Larry Cohen again, called The Original Gangsters.
Right.
And that has an amazing cast, and it's a fast-paced, fun action movie. We got a scene that I love from that is going to be the scene that we play next. So let's bring down the lights. Let's watch that scene.
If you pull a gun, use it. You know? And I didn't see. I
Write
don't
that
kill
down
him.
too.
I don't kill him. I just hurt him. You know? But this was a film that I wanted to do because I had all these actors that we're talking about. We had Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Richard Roundtree, that had sort of disappeared off the screen, and I wanted to bring them all back, to give them back their image, to give them back their strength that they had before, because nobody else was doing it. So I wanted to make this film to show that these guys still had some credibility, they still had some marketability. I know they had fans wanting to see what happened to them, to see where they were, so I put this film together for that sole purpose.
Yeah, this movie holds up. It's a lot of fun. Is there going to be another one?
I'm trying really hard to raise the money. I mean, I got a sequel called Old School Gangsters. It's a sequel to this called Old School. And the budget is $1 million too. I mean, it's like pulling teeth, man. They're making $20 million, $50 million, $100 million films that don't make money. And I got one that's it's going to cost $1 million too, and it'll probably make $40 million if we ever get made. But finding the money is really tough because the color thing still exists. I mean, they found a way to hide it, but it still exists. For me to raise $1 million too, man, it's like raising $100 million. And some other kid will come along and could get $5 million from a studio really quick and make a terrible movie. And this one is a winner without a doubt.
And you can't just go take a trip to Europe and just pick up a couple of overseas vouchers like you used to.
I can do that, but the point is, when you do that, you lose money. If I go to a foreign company and said, I want $100,000 for your territory, I'll give me $100,000. They compromise with 65 because they know that if you need their money, then you've lost your bargaining power.
Right.
So by selling it for 65, I've just lost $35,000. So I don't want to succumb to that at this point.
Mm-hmm. So there's a game to that sort of bargaining when you go and try to put the money together and the financing together for a film.
Most definitely. The bargaining is usually on their side because they know by you coming to them, you need the money. It's better if you have a finished product. Then you could say, I want 100, and they says no, and then he says, fine, I'll go sell it to somebody else. And they say, well, come back, let's talk some more. But if they know that you need their money, you lose your bargaining power.
Mm-hmm. You've learned an awful lot about making movies, and as we noted, there's a lot of filmmakers in the audience. I'm wondering that if you were to look back and say that you're talking to yourself just out of football and you're about to start making movies, you could give yourself some advice. What would that advice be?
Well, understand this. The way that I learned about the business was by being screwed. So when you're screwed, you learn about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position if you really want to get your creativity out there. Sometimes you put yourself in a vulnerable position and you have to take the blows. But as you take the blows, you learn how to make a better deal the next time or how to avoid the blows. But there will be blows. You cannot avoid them. There will be mistakes that you make and you cannot avoid them. But you learn from each one. As long as you learn from each one that you make, it's to your advantage.
Do you hold a grudge against any of those people that screwed you?
I haven't killed anybody.
But do you hold a grudge?
I haven't killed anybody.
Well, so a lot of people here, again, as we said, make movies. So you had to go and pick up and learn the technical side. Are you the kind of director that looks at it and says, I need that kind of lens on this. I need that kind of lens on this. Or are you the kind of director that gets the performances together and sort of trucks it out there?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about if you have the right director, like Roberto Rodriguez, okay? What's so great about him is that he hires people to do the job that he expects them to do. If you hire a guy to play a part, you don't tell him what to do. You don't teach him about that part. You hire him because he represents, in your mind, what he will bring to the table. So you don't change that. You don't direct him. You give him freedom to expand it or to show it. And then if you don't like it, which you probably will, you just say, would you bring this down or do this? You don't really, if you're a good director, you don't change the people that you hire. You give them the freedom to bring what you hired them for.
Do you ad-lib a lot? Sorry, I need to step on that.
I don't like to ad-lib because everybody can't ad-lib. So you start that with somebody and then they start going over the top and they don't shut up. So when that happens, you lose credibility in the scene, or the scene starts to go off in a direction that you don't want it to go. So ad-libbing is not something that I like unless I know that I'm dealing with another professional actor who understands his character and that whatever he has to say back to me is in character. And that way you can enhance sometimes, but most often you lose because they keep going and you keep saying, when are you going to shut up? You know?
and time is money on a film set.
It's not about time. It's about honesty. It's about not losing your audience. And the less you have to say, the better. Mm-hmm. If you bring a presence, you don't need the words. You just need the presence and a couple of words to establish who you are in that particular scene. You don't need a whole bunch of dialogue. I mean, the worst thing is to see a movie and then have a guy start talking about, well, yeah, when I was in the 8th grade, I had this girlfriend. Wait a minute, it's an action movie. Well, I don't want to know all about it. I don't know what you did in the 8th grade, you know? Let's get back to the action. Let's get back to the story. Let's get back to you going to rescue somebody. Don't be talking about your dog that died 6 months ago. I don't want to hear about that. But what they're trying to do is give an acting performance, right?
Are we talking about Elliot Gould, your good friend?
Elliot is a good guy. He means well.
Yeah, he ad-libs all over the place.
He means well. He means well.
But it's just, the reason I asked about the ad-lib is we're showing From Dusk Till Dawn, so I watched several prints of From Dusk Till Dawn to try to get the best one. And so I watched your performance in that several times. It looked like, and good actors make it look like ad-libbing when they're doing off the scripts, but it looked like ad-libbing in that.
Everything that I did in Dusk Till Dawn, I went to Roberto first and said, this is what I want to say, and this I think will enhance the scene. I said, we got this big zombie walking by. He says, I'm going to say to him, whatever you got to say to him, say to me first. And then I said, okay, I'm a martial arts guy, so when he comes at me, I'm going to take his heart out. But I'm going to have his heart in my hand, and some way we can make it look like it's still beating. He said, oh, that's a good idea. So, or either he would have said, no, that's shit, man, don't do it. Okay, then that would have been the end of that. But he approved it, and we did it. That's what made it work.
Well, I hope you guys have seen From Dusk Till Dawn already, because if not, it just spoiled the whole movie for you. So we're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon here. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a joy to talk to you about all this. Do you have any, not necessarily filmmaking advice, but just parting words of advice in life that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think I've said that along the way, you know. Don't let people change what you want to do. Don't fit into, don't be a follower. Don't be a trend follower. Be a trend setter. Don't fall into the trap where you got to do it this way because it'll make money. That's not why you're specifically supposed to be making a film for. You're making it to express yourself, to express how you feel. And if it makes money, good. And if it doesn't make money, you've learned never do that again. So it's all a learning process, but you have to take the chance in order to learn.
Have you always made money on every movie that you've made?
Every movie I've ever made has made money. Yeah.
All right. So now you filmmakers have something to try to aim for. So you can always make more movies if you make money with the last movie that you make. What's the next movie that you're going to make?
I have a film that just completed called Atomic Eden. I made it in Berlin, Germany. It's about Hitler had an atomic weapon that he had hid in one of his bunkers, and all the bad guys were after it. So they sent me to retrieve it before they did. And I want you to know that you're safe.
All right, well, spoiler alert for that one, too. Fred, it has been such a joy. You guys, give a big round of applause to Fred Williamson.